sort of information coming out of Georgia right now, or the case just the case is gone. It's not working.
The United States lost Georgia. We had Georgia. We owned Georgia. Georgians were with us. My daughter was a Peace Corps volunteer in Georgia. Spent 2.5 years there. You really have to screw up to lose Georgia. Georgia was so firmly inside the American camp, so firmly inside the European Union camp, that they passed a constitutional amendment that said that we have to become part of the European Union. That's done now, finished. I mean, the amendment's still there, but it's just not going to happen. Why? Because, again, we don't have Russian experts. We have people who are experts in manipulating and exploiting Russia. And what the Georgian people learned is that whatever Georgian experts we had aren't friends of Georgia. See, the United States is incapable of being a friend of anybody. We're only friends of ourselves. We use everybody. If we had just simply put on our thinking caps, asked ourselves what are the highest priorities for the Georgians and how can we meet those priorities, the Georgians would have bent over backwards for us. You don't have to have Georgia in NATO for Georgia to be in NATO. Anybody who understands Georgia knows what I'm talking about. We already had a Georgian military that was training with NATO, equipped with NATO, everything but NATO. You don't have to have Article 5 protections for Georgia. First of all, it's unrealistic as long as Abkhazia and South Ossetia continue to be disputed territories. Imagine if the United States actually articulated a plan, a realistic plan for getting Abkhazia and South Ossetia back. Imagine if we told the Georgians that in order to do that, you're going to have to improve relations with the Russians. You're going to have to. Now, that doesn't mean that you walk away from the United States. Imagine if we're the country that's facilitating this improvement of relations so that Russia feels comfortable with Georgia being reunited and also being in the Western orbit. See, if we cared about the Georgians, we wouldn't have to stick a thumb in the Russian eyes. We would teach the Georgians to peacefully coexist with the Russians. We would be like the Russians, thinking strategically long term. You see, once Georgia is reunified, and then Georgia now is inclined to say, hey, we can peacefully coexist with Russia and have good economic relations. They need good economic relations, but we can be part of the West too. They can join the European Union. See, the European Union never really wanted them. That's the thing. NATO never wanted them. The European Union never wanted them. It was never going to happen. We were simply using Georgia as a tool to take down Russia. And the Georgians woke up to that reality. Fortunately for Georgia, the Georgian Dream government woke up to that reality in time to check it and save Georgia. Otherwise, Georgia would have gone the route of Ukraine to be a destroyed nation. And it's a very small nation. It can't absorb the damage that Ukraine has. The Russian-Georgian war would be over very quickly, and it would have been devastating for Georgia. So America lost Georgia because, again, go back to what I told you before. We don't have Georgian experts. We don't have Russian experts. And we don't have people that look out for the best interests of nations that we ostensibly call our friends. Russia, on the other end, does have Georgian experts. Russia does have a deep desire to be friends with Georgia. They've been friends with Georgia forever. The Soviet Union incorporated Georgia. My wife is Georgian. She was educated in Moscow. She viewed herself as a Soviet, which means that she recognizes, not just that she's Georgian, but that her friends, her relatives, her comrades, her colleagues are Russians, they're Ukrainians, they're Belarusians, they're Uzbek, they're Tatars. They're part of this great, conglomerate of peoples that, even though it's not the Soviet Union today, still should have a fraternal sense of belonging. The United States doesn't recognize that. We want to undo decades of history and social conditioning of economic reality simply to stick it to the Russians without any concern what the consequences to the Georgian people would be.
Yeah. Just to wrap up this session,